Have you ever met someone and felt like the universe had planned that meeting all along? Or sensed an invisible thread connecting you to a person you've only just encountered? What if? No meeting is random, and every soul you cross paths with is a message in disguise. Let's explore the mystery together. There are moments in life when someone enters our world right when we need them most. It's almost as if they were sent, carrying a message, offering guidance, or showing up just in time to help us overcome something heavy. Have you ever experienced that eerie familiarity when meeting a stranger, like living a déjà vu, as if you'd already known them in some forgotten lifetime? In this video, we'll uncover a profound truth. People don't just randomly show up in our lives. They appear for a reason, specific and meaningful. So, find a quiet space, settle in, and stay with us until the end. What you're about to hear may awaken something deep within your heart. And before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to Buddhism Seeds, turn on the notification bell, and share this video. It helps us continue creating meaningful content every day to nourish your spiritual journey. Now let's begin. One peaceful spring morning, as delicate petals danced in the wind beneath a cherry tree in full bloom, the elderly monk Hotaka sat in silent meditation. A young traveler named Hiroshi approached, bowing respectfully before him. "Master," he asked gently, "why do I sometimes feel such a strong bond with certain people, as if I've known them forever? And yet, with others, I feel a strange discomfort, like they're not meant to be in my life at all. This confuses me. Are these connections mere coincidence?" Hotaka opened his eyes and looked at the young man with quiet clarity. "No one comes into your life without reason," he replied. "And this truth runs deeper than most ever realize. Every encounter, brief or lasting, carries meaning. Some people pass through our lives like travelers at a station, while others stay and walk beside us through many seasons." Slowly, the old monk stood and gestured toward the wide, cloudless sky. "Look at the birds above, dear friend. They don't fly aimlessly. They follow the wind's invisible guidance, just as we are drawn by unseen forces toward those we are meant to meet." Hiroshi lifted his eyes, watching the birds glide freely across the sky, and felt something shift inside. "Picture your life as a vast, blooming garden," Hotaka continued. "Every person you meet is a seed planted by destiny. Some blossom quickly, like vibrant flowers that last a season. Others grow into mighty trees, steady, enduring, and deeply rooted. Each one brings a chance for growth, whether you see it or not." Hiroshi smiled faintly, recalling the many flowers and trees that had appeared along his life's path. "The ones who cause us pain," Hotaka said with a trace of sorrow, "are often our greatest teachers. They are like sharp stones underfoot, uncomfortable, even wounding, but they shape us. They help us grow strong and find the resilience hidden within." The young man closed his eyes for a moment, memories of difficult lessons washing over him like quiet waves. "And then," the monk said, pointing to a large, weathered tree nearby, "there are those who arrive when our hearts are stormy. Like this tree's roots that hold firm through fierce winds, these people become our shelter, our quiet strength, our safe harbor." A face flickered in Hiroshi's mind, someone who had once been his refuge in a time of turmoil, someone he deeply cherished, but who had eventually walked away. "Finally," Hotaka whispered, "there are the rare few who remain. They are like stars in our sky, constant, bright, unshaken. These are the true friends who walk with us always." Hiroshi stood in thoughtful silence, as if the universe had just whispered something only he could hear. But what determines who appears, who stays, and who goes? What unseen thread connects these souls to our path? Some remain by our side, family, soulmates, or close companions, sharing both our burdens and our joys. They are the ones we lean on when life gets heavy, and the ones we celebrate with when our dreams come true. Hiroshi smiled gently, a warmth blooming in his chest. He felt surrounded by a quiet sense of gratitude for the special people who had entered his life and walked beside him through the seasons of growth and change. Hotaka's gaze drifted toward the vast sky, where a faint golden light shimmered between drifting clouds. His eyes sparkled with quiet wisdom as he spoke once more. "Recognize and cherish each person who crosses your path, young Hiroshi. They are not here by accident. Each one plays a role in your story, and you in theirs. Life is an intricate weaving of destinies, and every encounter leaves a thread in the fabric of your being." After a thoughtful pause, Hotaka continued with a deeper tone. "There are, at the heart of it, three kinds of people we meet along this path. First, there are those who support us in our evolution, who challenge us, push us, and inspire us to rise beyond our limits. Their presence urges us to awaken to a deeper awareness and reach new heights of consciousness." Hiroshi listened intently, his heart steady and still, like the surface of a quiet lake. "Then," the monk said, "there are those who bring renewal. When we cross paths with them, something shifts immediately. A fresh breeze enters our soul. It's as if the universe whispers through their presence, stirring a change deep within us. We may not fully understand the purpose behind these encounters, but one thing is certain. After meeting them, we are no longer the same. A part of us begins to transform eternally." The young monk felt as though he were remembering moments that hadn't yet happened, faces, voices, echoes of significance hidden in time. "And finally," Hotaka added, "there are those who come to remind us of who we truly are. They might stay only briefly, perhaps just for a passing moment, but their impact is powerful. They help us remember the direction of our path, strengthen our will, and encourage us to keep walking forward." These words settled deeply in Hiroshi's heart. In the years that followed, he continued to walk the path Hotaka had once illuminated, step by step, with mindful devotion. Every encounter, whether a fleeting stranger or a lifelong partner, became to Hiroshi a vital piece in the beautiful mosaic of his life. Through hardship and happiness alike, he came to see that each person carried a lesson, each experience a hidden gift that helped him grow into who he was meant to become. As time flowed on, the novice Hiroshi matured into a wise elder himself. His eyes, once full of questions, now held quiet understanding. In his role as a spiritual guide, he would share the same timeless truth with the younger monks under his care, that life is a river of meaningful meetings. And in that flow, each person is like a drop that shapes the unique beauty of our existence. So, what is the deeper meaning of this story? It's this. No matter how short or long, gentle or painful, each encounter adds richness to our journey. Life is a wondrous unfolding, a journey of discovery, and every person we meet brings something special. Some may pass away, some may leave for reasons we don't understand. Some may hurt us, forcing us to make hard choices and walk away. But in each case, their role was fulfilled. One of our needs or desires had been met. And so, in a world where lives intertwine and separate like the branches of a tree, true wisdom lies in keeping our hearts open, in embracing every encounter, in learning from the subtle lessons hidden within the folds of destiny. Even when challenges arise, when life grows stormy and we feel unsure of the path, it is often in those exact moments that the most meaningful souls arrive. As we journey through life's unpredictable terrain, there are moments when we feel lost, uncertain, or overwhelmed. But just as we learned before, the universe has its way of sending people at the right time. Those who give us courage, who help us endure and overcome even the most difficult of trials. They appear, Hotaka once told Hiroshi, like a soft breeze during a storm, offering comfort, clarity, and strength to keep going. In the great dance of life, he continued, every encounter is like a musical note. Some are soft, some are sharp, but all are essential to the melody of your existence. If you listen closely, you'll hear the harmony unfolding through the people who cross your path, and in that harmony, there is always beauty. The young monk sat silently, feeling the truth in those words echo through him. Whether it's a deep love, a cherished friendship, or even a fleeting connection with a stranger, Hotaka added, an encounter can change us forever. One word, one act, one shared moment can leave an imprint that lasts a lifetime. But then, a question arises, one many of us have quietly asked ourselves. Have you ever wanted to help someone who didn't ask for it? Felt compelled to step in, even when they showed no sign of needing assistance? And later, did you wonder, was that truly helpful, or did it somehow make things worse? In the Zen story you're about to hear, we'll explore this very dilemma. We'll uncover a surprising truth taught in Buddhist wisdom, that helping others only when they ask can be a more compassionate and karmically balanced path for them and for yourself. Stay with us until the end. What you discover might forever shift the way you understand human connection and the very nature of giving. In a quiet Buddhist monastery tucked away in the hills, surrounded by lush gardens and ancient trees, an elderly monk named Noro gathered his disciples for a teaching close to the heart of many. Curiosity shimmered in the young monk's eyes. Each had their own story, times they had offered help only to see it lead to confusion, unintended pain, or even conflict. They longed to understand why things had not unfolded as they had hoped. Life, Noro began, his voice calm like the still surface of a pond, is much like a great river. Each of us is a small boat sailing its winding current. But too often, he continued, we leap into someone else's boat without invitation, trying to steer their course, and in doing so, we disrupt their journey, even if our intentions are kind. To bring his point to life, Noro shared a story passed down through generations. He spoke of a young monk who, in his eagerness to help, stepped in to assist a struggling friend without waiting to be asked. Though his heart was sincere, his actions unintentionally created a chain of misfortunes. What he meant as help became a labyrinth of setbacks, both for himself and the one he wished to support. Suffering, Noro said gently, is not something we should always rush to remove. It is a necessary part of spiritual growth. Just as pressure shapes a jewel, challenges shape the soul. When we intervene too soon, we steal the opportunity for others to learn, to grow, and to rise stronger from their own trials. To deepen the lesson, Noro told the tale of two longtime friends, Ash and Masu. They had shared many seasons of joy and sorrow since childhood. One day, Ash learned that Masu had fallen into financial trouble. Without telling his friend, Ash secretly paid off part of the debt Masu was burdened by. His intentions, the master explained, were pure, but the outcome was not. Masu, though deeply touched by Ash's concern, was also quietly distressed. The silent act of generosity robbed him of the chance to take responsibility, to face the hardship himself, and to discover his own resilience in solving the problem. In the previous story, we saw how Ash's well-meaning gesture, meant to ease a friend's suffering, began to unravel into emotional distance and unintended pain. What started as an act of kindness slowly turned into a heavy silence between two once close friends. Masu, though grateful at first, later discovered that Ash had learned personal details he had wished to keep private. This quiet invasion of his boundaries made Masu feel emotionally detached, almost exposed. A seed of discomfort was planted. Meanwhile, Ash, who had hoped his help would bring relief and connection, instead felt a deepening strain. The friendship began to shift in tone. Rather than creating closeness, his efforts seemed to spark guilt and unease. He wondered, had he done the right thing after all? In the end, the unsolicited act of kindness brought not peace, but discord and confusion. It served as a powerful reminder that even good deeds, if misaligned with timing or consent, can lead to unexpected consequences. People often forget, Noro explained to his disciples, that each of us is living out our own karma. Our past actions shape the lessons we must face. When we step in uninvited, we risk disrupting that karmic balance, not only for them, but for ourselves. Every choice, even one rooted in compassion, echoes back to us. It's like tossing a stone into a still lake. The ripples reach far beyond what we intended. To help his students understand more deeply, the old monk shared another story. This time about a young man who, overwhelmed by love and concern for a close friend, tried to fix her troubles without her asking. But instead of solving anything, he found himself caught in a spiral of complications, setbacks, and growing frustration. If you walk into someone else's labyrinth uninvited, Noro said gently, you don't just get lost. You might trigger a chain reaction. Your presence, however noble, may create more suffering than healing. He paused, then offered a simple but profound metaphor. Imagine trying to cure someone without asking if they're willing to let go of the very things that made them sick. Sometimes, what looks like suffering is actually a soul undergoing transformation. A karmicus foliamat focosodic, lassou es faidalmas talan, de successes. And by interfering, we may delay or even derail the sacred unfolding of someone else's spiritual journey. Even the Buddha, Noro reminded them, understood this deeply. Buddha himself, he said, resisted the urge to help unless it was requested. He recognized the sacredness of the individual learning process. The karma of each being must be respected. Suffering, though severe, is a wise and irreplaceable teacher. To bring the lesson closer to home, Noro described simple moments from his own monastic life, times when he witnessed someone he loved struggle. His heart urged him to act, and yet he learned to pause. Over time, he saw that waiting, allowing the person to ask for help, was not neglect. It was wisdom. It was trust. Trust in their journey. Trust in karma. Almost always, Noro said, suffering is the fruit of past choices. And karma is the supreme law guiding this universe. When we intervene without being called, we step into a karmic vortex, a current not meant for us. And once inside, the consequences become unpredictable for them and for us. He turned to the circle of young monks seated around him. "Remember," he said softly, "suffering is like a teacher who guides us along the path of spiritual evolution. To interfere with that teacher's lesson is to deny someone the wisdom only experience can provide." To help them understand further, Noro shared more stories from daily life at the monastery. He spoke of how the monks, young and eager, learned to grow not because he always stepped in to rescue them, but because he didn't. "In fact," he said, "many of the monks I've trained became wiser and more confident, precisely because I allowed them to find their own way, even when it was hard." So what happens when we let go of the need to fix and instead learn to trust the journey of others? Let's move forward to explore how true compassion sometimes lies in restraint and what that teaches us about love and wisdom. In the previous part of our story, Master Noro reminded us of the wisdom in restraint, how stepping back can often be the most powerful way to support someone's growth. Rather than rushing to fix their path, he allowed the monks under his care to face their own trials, trusting that karma had its own lessons waiting for each of them. "The temptation to intervene is strong," Noro said, "but when we resist it, we allow others the space to grow." To help clarify this teaching, he shared a simple yet powerful metaphor. "Every action we take," he explained, "is like throwing a stone into a calm pond. The ripples move outward, but eventually they return to us. When we help without being asked, we stir not only the waters of another's karma, but our own as well. The impact may stretch further than we imagine." So what can we take away from this story? It teaches us the value of discernment, knowing when to offer help and when to simply wait. Karma, like a flowing river, carries our actions far beyond the moment, and sometimes the very structure of destiny can shift depending on how and when we choose to get involved. Before you reach out to help someone, Noro gently advised, pause and reflect. What do they truly need? Do they want your advice? Or do they simply need someone to listen, to hold space for their struggle without judgment? Not every cry is a call for rescue. Sometimes a person just needs a kind presence, a steady heart, a listening ear. Let us never forget the sacredness of each individual path. To help should never be impulsive or ego-driven, but a conscious act rooted in respect for another's free will and their own spiritual unfolding. Life is not a straight road. It's a woven tapestry of lessons, challenges, and sacred opportunities for growth. And when we jump in too soon, we might unknowingly rob someone of the very experience they need to meet their truest self. True wisdom, Noro concluded, lies in recognizing this, that the greatest teachers in life are often the challenges we face ourselves. And sometimes, the most compassionate thing we can do is step aside. So may our help be a light, offered with presence and awareness, when requested, not a chain of unintended consequences born of impatience or fear. But as we walk this path of self-awareness, another question often arises. How do we recognize people who are truly harmful to our well-being? What signs can help us identify those who drain our energy, disrupt our peace, or hinder our growth? In the next Zen story, we will explore 9 clear signs to help you recognize and navigate away from toxic individuals, those who quietly undermine your emotional balance and spiritual progress. So stay with us until the end. What you learn next may empower you to protect your peace and walk more freely on your path. In the previous part, Master Hogai began guiding young Kiara on how to recognize toxic individuals, those whose presence, words, or behavior can slowly erode our inner peace. But before labeling anyone as harmful, he urged her to take a step back and look deeper. The people who drain our energy, he said, don't always start out that way. Often, they've been shaped by wounds we cannot see, painful experiences, betrayals, or silent suffering that hardened their hearts. Kiara listened closely, her eyes soft with empathy. So, Hogai continued, before you push someone away, ask yourself, why does this person behave like this? Are they truly bad, or are they reacting from a place of unresolved pain? And more importantly, is there something I can do to protect my peace without becoming unkind? Only after you've asked those questions and answered them honestly can you decide whether it's time to set a boundary or walk away. Kiara felt a quiet stillness as she reflected on the Master's words. She could feel the wisdom and compassion behind them, not harsh judgment, but a deep understanding of human nature. Master Hogai nodded gently. Now that we've cleared that up, let's begin. The first sign you must watch for, he said, is constant manipulation. Picture someone who, with subtle cunning, twists situations to serve their own interests. It might be a colleague who, under the guise of concern, warns you that your manager is unhappy with your work, only to later encourage you to accept a job elsewhere. At first, you might think they're being helpful, but in truth, they're clearing the path for their own gain. As Kiara absorbed his words, a memory surfaced, an incident from the previous year that now made more sense. She had been manipulated by someone she trusted. The second sign, Hogai went on, is a lack of genuine empathy. This is someone who listens only when it benefits them, who shows interest in your life only when there's something in it for them. When you're struggling, they remain cold or distant, and when you succeed, they seem unmoved, unless they see a way to use it for their advantage. Such a person, the monk explained, can leave you feeling invisible. Over time, this absence of care creates emotional wounds far deeper than harsh words ever could. The third sign, he said next, is habitual conflict. Some individuals seem unable to exist without stirring chaos. Even in moments of calm, they provoke arguments, plant seeds of doubt, or stoke drama. This behavior not only creates stress, it poisons the entire environment, slowly turning relationships bitter and peace into tension. Kiara nodded quietly. She had known someone like this. No matter how kind or calm she tried to be, there was always something that sparked conflict. The fourth sign, Hogai continued, is an overwhelming need for control. Imagine a friend, partner, or even family member who constantly steers your decisions, who questions your plans, discourages your dreams, or pressures you to change direction, not for your sake, but for theirs. They might say it's concern, he added, but at its core, it's about power. This controlling energy slowly chips away at your independence, making it harder to hear your own voice. Kiara's thoughts turned inward. Had she allowed others to steer her away from her own truth? The fifth sign, the monk said, is a disregard for personal boundaries. This is the person who constantly invades your space, who reads your messages, questions your privacy, or insists on your time even when you ask for solitude. These violations might seem small at first, but over time they rob you of your sense of freedom and safety. He paused, letting the weight of the message settle. And finally, Hogai said, there is the sixth sign, frequent deception. Imagine someone who masks their intentions with lies, half-truths, or silent omissions, turning trust into doubt. In the previous part, Master Hogai had just begun to describe the sixth warning sign, frequent deception. He spoke of those who wear a mask, those who twist the truth not out of forgetfulness, but as a deliberate tool to control, confuse, or manipulate. Imagine someone, he said, who weaves a subtle, sticky web of lies, distorting reality to shape outcomes in their favor. As soon as Hogai spoke these words, Kiara's thoughts drifted to her friend Luca. She recalled how he often exaggerated or embellished stories, not just for fun, but to make himself seem more impressive, more dramatic, more important than he truly was. This kind of chronic dishonesty, Hogai concluded, is not harmless. It reveals either ill intent or a deeply rooted habit of deceit. And those who are willing to twist the truth for small things may one day do so in ways that cause harm to others. He paused, then moved on to the seventh sign, vindictive behavior. Think of someone, he said, who reacts to criticism, even the gentlest kind, with vengeance. Instead of reflecting or adjusting, they try to punish, to strike back. Kiara's mind instantly recalled Marta, a co-worker she had once warned in private about an issue at work. Marta, rather than appreciating the honesty, had begun to spread false rumors behind Kiara's back. She had deliberately tried to make her look bad in front of other colleagues. This kind of behavior, Hogai explained softly, can start a vicious cycle of negativity. It destroys trust, breaks down connection, and corrodes the foundation of all human relationships. He then raised his hand slightly, signaling the approach of the eighth sign, an insatiable need for attention. Picture someone who constantly seeks the spotlight, he said. They exaggerate, dramatize, and turn every gathering into a stage, where they play the starring role. Kiara thought immediately of one of her friends in her social group. No matter the occasion, this friend always found a way to center the conversation around herself, amplifying every small misfortune, seeking endless sympathy, always needing validation. The craving for constant attention, Hogai continued, may seem harmless at first, but over time it drains those around them. It creates imbalance. It takes space away from others. Then came the ninth and final sign, a lack of personal accountability. This, the master said, is someone who always shifts blame, never owning their mistakes. No matter what happens, it's always someone else's fault. Kiara's heart sank as she thought of her brother and several others in her life who had repeated this pattern since childhood. Her brother, in particular, had a habit of creating trouble and then blaming her, their younger sister, or anyone else nearby. It had become almost predictable. Hogai let the silence linger, allowing each lesson to settle like soft rain on fertile soil. To recognize these 9 signs, he said slowly, requires more than just observation. It requires courage, because sometimes those who harm us most are the ones we love. His voice softened. But if you truly wish to protect your serenity, your balance, and your path, then you must learn to see. Awareness is the first step to healing. Kiara looked up at the master, her eyes full of gratitude. She bowed deeply, thanking him for the clarity and strength his wisdom had offered her. But Hogai wasn't quite finished. "One last thing," he said gently. "In addition to recognizing these patterns, always listen to your intuition. If something feels off, even if you can't explain it, pause, reflect. Do not fear ending a relationship that poisons your peace. Protecting your inner world is not selfish. It is sacred." This story, he concluded, is not just a guide to recognizing others. It is a call to awareness. It teaches you to stay alert to energy, to intention, to truth. On your spiritual path, choose your companions wisely. Choose those who honor your growth. He looked toward the horizon as if sensing the next lesson arriving on the breeze. "And now," Hogai said with calm intention, "we turn to something just as important: forgiveness." Forgiveness is often seen as a gentle virtue, a noble act of healing. But in the next part of this story, we'll explore a deeper, more challenging insight from Buddhist wisdom, one that may change how you view forgiveness forever. In the previous reflection, we explored the delicate art of recognizing harmful influences in our lives and learned the importance of trusting our intuition to protect inner peace. Now, Master Hogai gently turns our attention toward another profound topic, one that is often praised but rarely understood deeply: forgiveness. What follows is not just a story about Buddhist views on forgiveness. It is a call to rethink our personal beliefs and emotional habits. It invites us to reimagine what it truly means to forgive, not from pride, not from obligation, but from clarity, compassion, and spiritual strength. High in the mist-covered mountains of ancient India, there stood a humble monastery, quiet, timeless, and wrapped in the stillness of nature. There, an elderly monk named Kumin was widely known for his deep wisdom and peaceful presence. One afternoon, a troubled man came to him. His voice trembled as he approached the master. "Master Kumin," he said, bowing low, "I have carried anger for so long. How can I learn to forgive in the way of the Buddha?" With calm eyes and a gentle smile, Master Kumin invited the man to sit beside him under the shade of a flowering tree. "Let me tell you a story," he said. "A story that holds the heart of true forgiveness." And so, the lesson began. "There were once two brothers," Kumin said, "sons of a devoted merchant who had built his life around trade and profit. But these sons, as they grew, began to drift, not toward business, but toward the Buddha. They felt drawn to his peaceful teachings, and slowly their hearts turned away from the marketplace and toward meditation. The father, seeing this shift, grew troubled. He had spent his life building success through effort and commerce. To him, his sons were abandoning all he had worked for. As they spent more time with the Buddha, the merchant's worry transformed into resentment. One day, Kumin continued, this father decided he could no longer remain silent. Fueled by anger, he went to confront the Buddha directly. He imagined humiliating him in front of his followers. He imagined shouting, accusing, even spitting in his face. He believed the Buddha had stolen his sons' ambition, diverted them from their future. But when the merchant arrived at the place where the Buddha was teaching, something unexpected happened. There he was, Kumin said, sitting in quiet stillness, eyes half closed, a soft smile on his lips. The air around him seemed to hum with peace. The merchant stood frozen. His rage was still inside him, but so was confusion. The presence of the Buddha was unlike anything he had ever felt. The serenity in that space softened something within him. But pride, wounded and stubborn, reclaimed control. Driven by a final wave of defiance, the merchant did the unthinkable. He spat in the Buddha's face. Gasps rose from the disciples. Several of them stood, ready to defend their teacher. But the Buddha remained unmoved. With unwavering calm, Kumin described, the Buddha looked at the man, not with anger, not with judgment, but with complete peace. It was as if a wave of tranquility rippled outward from him, touching everyone in the room. The merchant, expecting confrontation or humiliation, instead faced something that disarmed him completely: compassion. In that moment, the man saw his own helplessness, his furious plan, his rehearsed accusations, all of it melted in the stillness of the Buddha's gaze. There was no retaliation, no harsh words, no condemnation. The Buddha simply was, open-hearted, silent, accepting, and that stillness became the mirror in which the merchant saw the weight of his anger. Remorse flooded his heart. The insults he had prepared seemed meaningless now, crumbling in the face of such boundless peace. And the Buddha, Kumin said softly, did not shame him. He offered him something far greater. He offered understanding. At this point, Master Kumin paused. He turned to the man beside him and said, "There is a lesson here, not just about the Buddha, but about what it means to forgive with true clarity. Let us continue and uncover the deeper meaning behind the Buddha's silence and how it reveals the most powerful form of forgiveness." In the previous part of the story, we witnessed a remarkable moment. The Buddha, calm and unshaken, received an act of aggression with pure presence, and in doing so, transformed a man's anger into deep introspection. Now, Master Kumin gently unveils the deeper meaning behind this act. True forgiveness begins not with words, but with perception. "My dear friend," Kumin said, turning to the man beside him, "forgiveness is like the stillness you saw in the Buddha. It is not a sentence we say aloud, nor a transaction between two people. It is something far deeper. It is the quiet act of letting go, of loosening our grip on the past and choosing to see the person before us through new eyes." With that, the monk returned to his story. The man, still reeling from the compassion he had received, returned home, but peace did not arrive with him. That night, he could not sleep. The image of the Buddha's serene face haunted him, so gentle, so unshaken, and it collided painfully with the memory of his own outburst, his act of spitting. It was as if two worlds were fighting inside him, one rooted in shame and guilt, and the other whispering of a better way forward. He was standing, Kumin said, at a crossroads, torn between regret for what he had done and the possibility of beginning again. This, the monk explained, was one of the most critical moments of the entire journey. The man had begun to look inward. For the first time, he wasn't blaming others or trying to justify himself. He was facing the truth of his own heart. He was not only seeking forgiveness, he was learning to forgive himself. But it was not easy. His mind, Kumin continued, kept replaying that moment. And his imagination, once a tool for ambition, became a battlefield, constructing painful scenes over and over again. Imagination, Kumin said, can be a sacred guide or a destructive trap. In the wrong hands, it feeds anger, self-blame, and endless cycles of resentment. But slowly, the man began to shift. He realized the Buddha had never met his violence with judgment. Instead, the Buddha had responded with presence and clarity, with no desire to punish, only to reflect back what was true. Little by little, the man's anger dissolved. His desire for control faded, and in its place rose something softer, genuine humility. Finally, one morning, the man returned to the Buddha, not with bitterness, but with a bowed head and an open heart. "Forgive me, Master," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "My ignorance blinded me. I was consumed by the future I imagined for my sons, and I could not see the peace they had already found." The Buddha looked at him with half-closed eyes and the same gentle smile as before. He listened quietly to the man's words, but when the man asked once more, "Will you forgive me?" the Buddha softly shook his head. "I cannot forgive you," he said kindly. "Because there is nothing to forgive?" The man stared at him, confused. "But I disrespected you." The Buddha replied, "You did not harm me. I did not receive your act with anger, so it left no wound in me. I see you, not as what you did in the past, but as who you truly are now." Kumin paused, letting the weight of those words settle in the quiet air. "This," he said, "was one of the greatest lessons the merchant would ever receive. Forgiveness is not just a gift we give to others. It is an awakening inside ourselves, a liberation. The Buddha's way was not about holding on to wrongs or building a list of offenses to erase. It was about transcending the need for blame altogether, about seeing clearly without the filters of pride, pain, or fear. From that moment on, the merchant's life began to change. He no longer sought forgiveness as a reward, but as a practice of presence. He began meditating daily, learning to observe his thoughts without being controlled by them. He stopped fighting the past and stopped fearing the future. Through silence, stillness, and self-forgiveness, he found a path to peace. But as his journey continued, the merchant would face one more test, one that would challenge not just his understanding of forgiveness, but his willingness to live it. After guiding the man through the profound experience of self-forgiveness, Master Kumin offered one final insight, a truth that tied everything together. In the quiet stillness of the monastery, he turned gently toward the man who had been listening with unwavering attention. "My dear friend," Kumin said softly, "forgiveness is not merely a gesture we extend to others. It is, first and foremost, an act of kindness toward ourselves. When we learn to see the present moment with new eyes," he continued, "we loosen the grip of old pain. When we release the destructive stories our imagination creates, stories born from guilt, anger, or shame, we finally make space for peace to arise." And so the story came full circle. The merchant, once imprisoned by his remorse, was now free. Through years of spiritual practice, meditation, and honest self-inquiry, he had learned to silence the echoes of the past. Eventually, he returned once more to the Buddha, not to ask, not to plead, but simply to offer his gratitude. And the Buddha, as always, welcomed him with a compassionate smile, radiant and joyful. Kumin closed the story with reverence, his voice steady but tender. "Forgiveness," he said, "whether directed toward others or ourselves, is not simple. It is a deep and transformative journey. It is not just a moral duty or an emotional release. It is a key that opens the door to a higher state of awareness. It lifts us toward compassion, liberates us from the burdens of the past, and invites in the light of a peaceful future." Then he asked gently, "And what, dear friend, is the true lesson hidden in this tale?" He let the silence speak for a moment before continuing. "The message is clear. In the Buddhist view, forgiveness is not something that ends with words. It is not merely a transaction. It is not something to give or to receive. It is a living expression of compassion, a gift we offer, not just to others, but also inward, to ourselves. And in doing so, he added, we allow those who have wronged us to begin seeing the truth of their actions, not through judgment, but through our gentleness. Our forgiveness becomes a mirror, a quiet, powerful force that opens their eyes and helps them grow. For in Buddhist philosophy, those who harm others are, in truth, harming themselves. Like a boomerang, karma ensures that every action returns to its source. Sooner or later, the one who caused suffering will face the need to forgive themselves. Remember, Kumin said, forgiveness is not just about your freedom. It can also become the seed of transformation for others. To open your heart to this kind of forgiveness, he concluded, is to help create a future rooted in wisdom, understanding, and inner serenity. But then he paused and looked a little deeper into the man's eyes. Sometimes, he said, we're so kind, so generous, so eager to help that we forget ourselves. We allow others to use us. We believe kindness is always the answer, and in doing so, we disappear. Have you ever asked yourself why you tend to overextend your kindness, even when it's not returned? Or why certain people always seem to help, even when their help wasn't asked for? In the next Zen story, we will explore the complexity of kindness, its hidden traps, its quiet burdens, and how to find a balance between giving to others and honoring yourself. In the last part, Master Ero began sharing with Kiara a timeless tale, one that illustrated the hidden dangers of unchecked kindness. Now, as the story unfolded beneath the quiet trees of the monastery, his voice grew deeper, guiding Kiara further into the lesson. At the heart of the village's prosperity, Ero said, stood a magnificent cherry tree. Towering and graceful, its deep roots symbolized not just nourishment, but the spirit of unity and generosity that bound the villagers together. He paused for a moment, then invited Kiara to visualize it. Picture this tree, he said, majestic in form, its branches heavy with blossoms and fruit. Its roots, thick and ancient, sank deep into the earth, just as the village's sense of community once ran deep through every household. For many years, the village thrived. The people lived in harmony, guided by the wisdom of giving, each family sharing what they had, each harvest a celebration of mutual care. The cherry tree was not just a source of food, but a living reminder of balance and interdependence. But, as Ero explained, time introduced temptation. Slowly, imbalance crept in. Some villagers, caught in desire and greed, began to take more than their share of the tree's fruit. They stopped tending its roots. They no longer thought to share the bounty. Their actions, though small at first, chipped away at the trust and cooperation that had once defined the village. Selfishness, Ero said gently, began to rot the roots of generosity. And with time, the tree, once proud and giving, grew weak. The village's spirit faded with it. Kiara listened closely, her gaze soft yet focused. In this fading tree, she began to see reflections of her own experience, the quiet disappointment she had felt when those she gave her heart to failed to give back. This story, Ero said, is more than a tale about a tree. It is a metaphor for kindness. When giving becomes one-sided, when it's taken for granted or used without care, it begins to collapse in on itself. Even something beautiful, like kindness, needs balance to survive. As Kiara sat in thought, Ero's calm voice continued. The moral, passed down through generations, he said, is that generosity must be offered with both an open heart and clear vision. If we give blindly, without discernment, we risk draining ourselves. And in doing so, we lose the strength needed to be truly present for others. A sense of clarity began to blossom within Kiara. She had always believed that being kind, being available to others was her role. But now, a deeper understanding of boundaries and balance was beginning to take root in her heart. Kindness, Aero explained, is powerful. But when it crosses healthy limits, it turns into something else, something soft on the surface, but harmful underneath. It becomes toxic kindness, a form of quiet self-erasure. He gave an example. Think of a parent, he said, who gives every ounce of themselves to their children, day and night, always giving, always sacrificing, but never once stopping to care for their own needs. In time, they become invisible, even to themselves. The story grew richer as Eero revealed more layers. He described how, over time, certain villagers, driven by the desire to accumulate, had completely neglected their duty to care for the cherry tree that had sustained them for generations. They forgot that giving and receiving must exist in balance. They forgot that life is not only about taking, but also about honoring, tending, and respecting the source. As Eero spoke, Kiara quietly reflected on her past relationships. She remembered how often she had given her time, her attention, her trust, without ever asking herself whether those efforts were reciprocated or truly appreciated. Seeing her thoughtful expression, the monk gently continued. Expecting too much from others, he said, often leads to disappointment. That's why we must learn the art of setting boundaries, of knowing when to give and when to step back. I am not saying, he clarified, that doing something for others is wrong. Helping others can be beautiful. But when we give only to please, when we ignore our own truth just to make someone else feel better, we lose balance. And without balance, there can be no peace. Time passed gently as the two sat beneath the late afternoon sun, and with each word, the young woman's heart opened a little more, ready to receive the wisdom that would finally bring her back to herself. But as Eero sensed the lesson settling into her heart, he knew one more truth remained, one that would finally help Kiara reclaim her voice and redefine the way she gave to the world. As Kiara sat quietly beside Master Eero, reflecting on the tale of the cherry tree, she felt something shift within her. The lesson was beginning to settle, not just in her mind, but in her heart. And now the monk offered his final loving insight to bring it all together. Generosity, Eero said softly, when it flows from a balanced heart, becomes something extraordinary. It has the power to transform not only relationships, but the giver and receiver alike. Kiara nodded gently. The wisdom he had shared was helping her untangle many old patterns, moments when she had given too much, hoped too hard, or tried too often to be what others needed without pausing to ask what she needed. True generosity, Eero continued, is like a gentle, flowing river, steady, clear, and nourished by awareness. It is born not from guilt or fear of rejection, but from deep love and understanding, and above all, it is never forced. Then, with a warm and sincere gaze, the monk offered his closing words. Kiara, he said, try to be like the cherry tree, rooted, steady, generous. Offer your kindness freely, but protect your balance. Let the joy of giving be enough, without tying it to what others give back. Because when kindness becomes sacrifice without limit, it begins to hurt, not heal. There are times, he added, when we act so kindly that we actually block others from growing. We step in too soon, fix things too fast, or give too much, so much that we leave no space for others to stand up for themselves. Kiara felt her breath slow. These words touched a quiet place inside her. We become so focused on meeting others' needs, Aero said gently, that we lose sight of our own. Slowly, we cancel ourselves out. Bit by bit, we start disappearing, not because others silence us, but because we silence ourselves. And when we erase our own needs too often, he added, others stop seeing them too. We lose our value not because we are not worthy, but because we've forgotten to show the world where our boundaries are. Kiara bowed with deep respect, her heart full of gratitude. She knew this conversation would mark the beginning of a new chapter, one rooted in balance, self-awareness, and a healthier way of being kind. So, Aero said, what is the true teaching hidden in this story? He let the question settle, then answered gently, that generosity is a powerful gift, but only when cultivated with care. It must be given with clarity, not compulsion, with awareness, not exhaustion. If we give endlessly, if we say yes to everything just to be seen as good, we will soon forget how to say no. And when we forget how to say no, we invite imbalance. Over time, he said, this will affect your motivation, your self-worth, and your mental well-being. So what should we do? Stop being kind? No, not at all. There are many ways to be kind, Aero smiled. The healthiest way is by setting clear boundaries. Let others know where your limits are. Release the guilt. Learn to say no, gently but firmly, when your heart or energy says it's time. He encouraged Kiara to write down her true priorities, to keep giving, but never at the cost of herself. Remember, he said softly, be kind, but not too kind. Because when kindness forgets itself, it may harm not only you, but even the ones you wanted to help. He paused. Then, looking up at the sky beyond the temple roof, he asked a question that sent a chill through the air. How many times, he said, have you felt that someone entered your life, not to help you, but to destroy your dreams? It was a powerful shift in tone. Sadly, he continued, there are people who carry heavy pain, resentment, envy, frustration, and sometimes their only outlet is to tear down what others are building. In the previous story, Master Aero reminded Kiara that even kindness must be guarded with balance, and that some people, driven by pain or envy, may enter our lives not to lift us up, but to bring us down. Now, in a quiet monastery nestled in the Japanese mountains, another master, Aizen, stood before his disciples, ready to speak of something few dare to confront, the presence of those who seek to destroy us. Today, Aizen began, his voice calm but piercing, we discuss a topic of great importance. He looked around the room, meeting the gaze of each student. We will uncover the 8 signs, clear markers that reveal who, among those entering our lives, may secretly wish to harm us. The room fell silent. One disciple, Kai, could no longer contain his curiosity. Master Aizen, he asked eagerly, what are these signs? And how can we protect ourselves from those with harmful intentions? Aizen gave a quiet nod and began, not with a direct answer, but with a story, an ancient lesson passed down through the monastery's long history. Once upon a time, he said, there was a wise sage who lived right here in this very village. He possessed a rare and precious gem, one that could have secured his comfort for the rest of his life. One day, a charming stranger approached the sage. He praised the sage's wisdom and expressed a deep admiration for the gem. With smooth words and a kind smile, Eisen said, the stranger asked to see the gem up close. The sage, flattered, agreed. But as he showed the gem, the cunning man distracted him with clever speech and quickly swapped the gem for a worthless shard of glass. The sage only realized the deception after it was far too late. The gem was gone, and the peace it promised vanished with it. This, Eisen continued, is the first sign: manipulation. Manipulation is like a silent shadow. It slips in unnoticed. Those who aim to destroy us may not strike openly. They twist the truth, distort our perception, and use subtle tactics to lead us astray. If we want to protect our truth, we must learn to recognize the quiet games manipulators play. The students sat in thoughtful silence, each remembering moments when their trust had been betrayed. Eisen then raised his hand gently, signaling the next lesson. The second sign, he said, is destructive criticism. He invited them to imagine a beautiful garden. Picture rows of delicate flowers, he said. Now imagine that, instead of being nurtured, they are stepped on, again and again. Not all at once, but little by little, and in time, the garden begins to wither. This, Eisen explained, is what happens when someone tramples on your spirit. Destructive criticism, disguised as feedback or concern, is meant not to help you grow, but to break you down. He emphasized the need to distinguish between constructive guidance and intentional harm. True feedback uplifts. Destructive words erode your confidence and dim your light. Then, with a faint smile, he introduced the third sign: social isolation. Eisen told the story of a fisherman from a nearby village. Known for his warmth and generosity, the man was beloved by all, until an envious rival began spreading false rumors. Whispers spread like wildfire. People began avoiding the fisherman. His customers disappeared. Friends turned cold. In time, he was left alone, his business ruined. Isolation, Eisen said solemnly, is like cutting a tree from its roots. Those who wish to harm you will often try to separate you from others, planting doubts, stirring suspicion, or quietly turning people against you. To resist this, Eisen advised, we must nurture genuine relationships, maintain integrity, and never allow ourselves to be pulled into silence or shame. Finally, Eisen revealed the fourth sign: defamation. He invited a guest, an elder from a neighboring village, to share a true account. There was a respected merchant, the elder said. His honesty and work ethic were known by all, but a jealous competitor, unable to surpass him, began to weave lies. Slowly, those lies stained the merchant's reputation. Customers stopped coming. Trust vanished. In time, he was forced to shut down his shop and leave the village. Eisen turned back to his students. Defamation, he said, is a poison. It seeps silently into the minds of others, distorting truth with fiction. And those who seek to destroy you will wield their words like weapons. They won't strike you with their fists, he said softly. They will strike your name, your dignity, your place in the hearts of others. The students sat, deeply moved by the cautionary tales. These are the first 4 signs, Eisen concluded. And if we wish to protect our peace, we must recognize them early, before their roots take hold. After revealing the first 4 signs of hidden harm, manipulation, destructive criticism, isolation, and defamation, Master Eisen reminded his disciples of the importance of protecting not only their peace, but also their reputation. We must defend our name, he said firmly. through truth and transparency. Let our lives be so honest that no slander can take root. Some disciples, moved by the stories and memories stirred within them, were visibly emotional. Tears welled in their eyes as they recalled moments in which their reputations had been quietly tarnished by whispers, lies, or betrayal. And yet, Eisen's words lit a path forward, a way to guard themselves without hardening their hearts. The lesson continued as Eisen raised his hand and introduced the fifth sign, sabotage of opportunities. Imagine a skilled craftsman, he said, a man whose hands could shape wood and stone into wonders. Each time he neared success, something strange would happen. His tools would vanish, his blueprints would go missing, his materials mysteriously ruined. Despite his talent and dedication, he could never advance. Each time he rose, something or someone pulled him down. Sabotage, Eisen said slowly, is like a cold wind that snuffs out the flames of progress. Those who fear your light will try to dim it by ruining your chances, delaying your success, or silently working to make you stumble. To protect ourselves, Eisen advised, we must remain watchful, surround ourselves with trustworthy allies, and most importantly, keep our ideas safe. Do not share dreams too early, he said. Let them grow in silence and speak only when the roots are strong. As the day wore on and the warm scent of tea drifted through the temple halls, Eisen's calm voice drew the disciples deeper into the lesson. He now revealed the sixth sign, violation of privacy. He spoke of a legend from an ancient city, of a wise man who served as the guardian of sacred knowledge. His scrolls held truths passed down through generations, but an envious figure, hungry for power, sought to steal those secrets. The intruder crept in under the veil of night, but the guardian, with the help of a trusted assistant, was prepared. The knowledge remained safe, protected not just by vigilance, but by discernment. Your private life, Eisen said solemnly, is sacred. Those who seek to harm you will often start by trying to enter your most personal spaces, not with force, but with curiosity dressed as concern. He warned his disciples to choose wisely who they allow into their inner circle. Protect your thoughts, your feelings, your plans. Not everyone who smiles at you wishes you well. As a thick mountain fog drifted through the monastery, softening the lantern light, Eisen continued, his voice now just above a whisper. The seventh sign, he said, is espionage. He spoke of a virtuous warrior in a faraway land. This warrior had grown strong and wise, and his enemies, threatened by his power, did not attack directly. Instead, they sent spies, silent observers who studied his movements, hoping to uncover weaknesses. But the warrior, Eisen said, possessed deep intuition. He sensed the invisible eyes, traced their patterns, and revealed the deception. His clarity and discipline repelled the attack without drawing his sword. Espionage, Eisen warned, is like a shadow cast over your mind. It seeks to rob you not of your belongings, but of your clarity, your peace of mind. To defend ourselves, we must become aware of hidden observers, subtle manipulations, and influences that creep in unnoticed. We must hold firm to our autonomy and live with awakened attention. Finally, Eisen approached the eighth and final sign, perhaps the most severe of all, physical aggression and threats. In a distant valley, he began, there lived a monk who had devoted his life to helping troubled youth escape a life of crime. He taught them compassion, meditation, and discipline. but his efforts unsettled those who profited from corruption. One day, a man whose interests were threatened by the monk's work gathered others and ordered an attack. The monk was beaten, not because he had wronged anyone, but because his virtue stood in the way of another's greed. Physical aggression, Eisen said solemnly, is the darkest frontier of harm. When envy, resentment, or fear reach their peak, those who wish to destroy you may turn to violence or intimidation. When someone threatens you, verbally or physically, it is no longer a game of words. It is an attempt to crush your spirit through fear. He paused, letting the silence deepen the gravity of his words. But even in the face of darkness, there is a way to respond, with wisdom, strength, and dignity. In the previous part, Master Eisen had just revealed the final and darkest sign, physical threats and aggression, urging his disciples to remain vigilant but not fearful. Now, as the stories came to a close and the late afternoon sun began to cast long shadows across the monastery courtyard, he offered them one final teaching, one not about danger, but about balance and inner strength. We must protect ourselves, Eisen said gently, by seeking help when needed. Courage is not isolation, it is knowing when to stand and when to lean on others. As the fire in the temple slowly faded and the stories found their resting place, Eisen looked at his disciples with eyes full of compassion. "My children," he said, "life is an intricate dance, and in this dance, some will move with you, guiding you, lifting you. Others may try to step on your rhythm, becoming your shadow. Watch carefully," he warned. "Be mindful of these signs. But do not live in fear. Do not let the fear of darkness dim your inner light. Instead," he added, "cultivate a garden of trust. Plant seeds of mutual respect. Surround yourself with those who uplift, not those who silently pull you down. In doing so, you create a space where shadows lose their power." A quiet stillness followed his words. The disciples, moved and reflective, understood that awareness was the key. Not fear, not suspicion, but clarity and self-respect. Eisen stepped back, allowing the temple's peaceful silence to return. And now, a new story begins. Are you someone who has many friends? Or perhaps someone with none at all? Maybe you're the type who has just a few, but deeply meaningful ones. In today's world, the word friendship is tossed around so easily. A few messages exchanged online, a brief encounter, a shared laugh, and suddenly we call someone a friend. But is that truly friendship? In the Zen story you are about to hear, we explore this question through the eyes of a young woman on a journey of personal growth. You'll discover why not having many friends, or even any, might not be a problem at all. In fact, it may be exactly what your soul needs. So stay until the end, because the moral of this story might shift the way you understand friendship entirely. There once lived a young woman named Elena. Kind-hearted and sincere, she often found herself surrounded by silence. Not because she disliked people, but because deep connections seemed so rare. She would watch the townspeople around her, gathered in lively groups, laughing, sharing meals, enjoying the lightness of togetherness. Each time she witnessed these moments, a soft ache filled her chest. She longed for companionship, for the comfort of being seen and understood. That aching loneliness became heavier with time. One day, while traveling through Japan, Elena decided to seek guidance, not from books or strangers, but from someone who truly understood solitude. She made her way to a small, monastery on the outskirts of a quiet village where a wise hermit monk named Kobo was known for his insight and peaceful spirit. What drew Eleanor to him most was not just his wisdom, but the fact that he lived alone. If anyone could understand the pain and perhaps the purpose of solitude, it would be him. With respectful humility, Eleanor approached the monk. "Master Kobo," she said softly, "I feel so alone. It seems like everyone else has friends, real ones, people who care, people they share life with. And I wonder, why not me?" Kobo looked at her with warm, understanding eyes and invited her to sit beneath the temple tree. "Elena," he began, "friendship is a precious gift. But your happiness should never depend on how many people surround you. I would like to share something with you, something that may help you see things differently. Not having many friends, or any friends at all, is not always a problem. In fact, it can even be a quiet strength." Though still wrapped in sadness, Elena leaned in, curious to hear more. "Please," she said, "help me understand. Why does it feel like a weakness when I have so few people to call friends?" Kobo smiled, and with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent decades in contemplation, he began to reveal the heart of his teaching. "My dear Eleanor," he said, "the first thing you must know is that relationships, true human connections, are sacred. But their value does not lie in their number. It lies in their depth." He paused to let the words settle like ripples across still water. "Would you rather have 10 people with whom you share only laughter and small talk, or just one with whom you can share your soul?" Eleanor sat in thoughtful silence. In the previous part, Eleanor began to shift her perspective. Through Master Kobo's gentle guidance, she realized that the number of friendships someone has doesn't necessarily reflect their depth or meaning. Now, as she sat quietly beneath the trees of the mountain monastery, her heart more open than before, she allowed herself to reflect on the nature of her own connections. She looked around at the world she had once envied. People surrounded by friends, constant laughter, endless gatherings, and quietly asked herself, what is the true quality of those relationships? Kobo, noticing the thoughtful expression on her face, smiled. He could see the change happening within her, and so he continued. "You see, Eleanor," he said gently, "having few friends, or even none, is not something to fear or be ashamed of. In fact, it offers a kind of freedom many people overlook. When you are not trying to fit into a group or maintain the approval of many," he explained, "you have more space to be fully yourself. There's no pressure to change your preferences, your voice, or your pace to match others. Imagine you have a passion, something unique, maybe even a little strange to those around you," he added. "With fewer people trying to shape your path, you're free to follow that passion fully, without fear of judgment." Eleanor's mind wandered to the quiet nights she loved, those hours spent watching the stars. She remembered how her classmates used to laugh at her when she shared her love for stargazing. They found it odd, pointless, but for her, it had always been a source of wonder and peace. Kobo continued, "We often forget that quality matters far more than quantity. One sincere connection, one friend who truly understands your emotions and sees the world through your eyes, is far more valuable than a crowd of companions who barely notice when your heart is hurting." He paused, giving Elena time to feel the truth in his words. She remembered a moment when a girl, someone not even considered a close friend, had sat beside her during a difficult time and simply listened. No advice, no judgment, just presence. In that silent gesture, she had felt seen in a way she never had before. "Isn't that worth more," Kobo asked, "than 100 conversations about nothing?" He allowed the question to float in the air like the sound of wind through leaves. Then he added, "Relationships take energy, emotional energy. And when we stretch ourselves too thin trying to maintain too many connections, we often lose the ability to go deep with the ones who truly matter. To nurture meaningful relationships," he explained, "we must focus. Just as a gardener cannot care for 1,000 flowers with the same attention as a few, so too must we choose where to direct our time, love, and emotional investment." He gave a practical example. Think about how much tension can build in large groups: misunderstandings, gossip, unspoken expectations. But with smaller, more intentional connections, you can preserve your peace. You're not constantly managing conflict. You're simply sharing your life. Eleanor nodded slowly. She remembered how group dynamics had often drained her. The pressure to please everyone, the confusion over who was truly sincere. And yet, in smaller settings, she always felt more relaxed, more herself. Kobo wasn't finished. He leaned in slightly and said, "And don't forget, solitude is not a curse, it's an invitation. In the quiet of being alone," he said, "you may discover passions you never knew you had. You can hear your own voice clearly. You're no longer living by someone else's expectations, and that is where real growth begins." "So, my dear Eleanor," he concluded softly, "learn to see solitude differently. It is not absence. It is space. Space to reflect, to heal, to grow. Having few but sincere friends gives you something precious: time to be with yourself. And in that time, you meet the deepest parts of who you truly are. That is where spiritual and personal growth flourish." But Elena's journey wasn't over. As she listened to Kobo's words, something inside her began to awaken, a deeper curiosity about the true nature of connection, belonging, and inner peace. In the quiet stillness of the monastery, after all that Master Kobo had shared, Eleanor sat deep in thought. The monk's wisdom had gently peeled back layers of misunderstanding, revealing a truth she had never fully seen before. Solitude, she now understood, wasn't a flaw. It was a mirror, a path, a quiet space where something beautiful could begin to grow. She reflected on how much time and energy she had once spent trying to fit into groups, to be accepted, to be liked, and how often that effort had left her feeling drained, invisible, or misunderstood. But now, things look different. When I'm not chasing approval, she thought, I have so much more time for what truly matters to me. She smiled as she realized how solitude had given her the space to discover hidden parts of herself, interests she had long ignored, creative ideas that once seemed silly, and the quiet joy of simply being. "It was beautiful," she whispered softly, "to meet myself again." Master Kobo, sensing the transformation within her, continued his teaching with gentle warmth. "One of the greatest freedoms," he said, "comes from not being tied down by the expectations of others. Imagine," he offered, "receiving a job opportunity in a distant place, an adventure calling your name. With no heavy attachments, no social strings, you're free to say yes, free to go, free to grow." Eleanor pictured the faces of people she had met over the years, individuals who, without the burden of pleasing many, had followed their dreams boldly. They had taken risks, embraced new beginnings, moved across the world in search of truth, and through it all remained deeply connected to the few real friends they had. True friendship, Kobo explained, isn't held hostage by geography. If you carry just one or two real companions in your heart, you'll never truly be alone. Real connection transcends distance and time. Eleanor's gaze softened as a new understanding bloomed within her. She realized that having fewer friends didn't mean she was lacking. It meant she was focused, centered, free to nurture what mattered most. She looked at Kobo and whispered, "I think I understand now." The old monk gently opened his arms and gave her a warm, heartfelt embrace. "Always remember," he said, "your joy doesn't depend on the number of people around you, but on the depth of the relationships you choose to hold close." "I've known many," he continued, "who believed they were alone, only to discover they had one person, just one, who was worth 100 others." He smiled, then added quietly, "Those with fewer friends often carry within them something rare: depth, sensitivity, a refusal to settle for surface-level connection. They are often the ones with the richest inner worlds and the greatest potential for true human compassion." Then, looking at Elena with soft sincerity, he said, "Loneliness, when reinterpreted, is not your enemy. It can become one of your greatest allies, an open door to deeper happiness, to personal growth, to spiritual peace. To live contentedly," he concluded, "you don't need many friends. You just need the right ones, the few who truly see you, support you, and help you grow. And if you naturally lean towards solitude, it may simply mean your soul is tuned to a deeper frequency, a quiet wisdom that many never learn to hear." Dear listener, what if your solitude is not a sign of lacking, but a sign of inner richness waiting to unfold? If this story touched your heart, we invite you to subscribe to Buddhism Seeds, like this video, and share it with someone who might need this gentle reminder. Leave a comment below and let us know. What does friendship mean to you today?